Hey guys, what's up? I just wanted to come and record a quick video because this week I accidentally created something that I'm calling the perpetual lead machine. And I can't make this up. I literally couldn't make this up. We have accidentally created a system that is just bringing us a lot of leads inside of what we're doing. And so I wanted to share this with you guys because we started doing this with one of our clients this week within his podcast closing team. And it's just been blowing up the amount of leads that he's had. And we're now using it as one of the lead sources for our business. And it's kind of crazy. So I want to kind of walk through you guys through this because I know there are so many of you guys who need more leads in your business. Like it's really the only thing that is stopping a lot of you guys. So I just want to give you some context on how this happened and also help you guys understand what we did in order to get so many leads coming in and what you can do in your position. So what we're talking about here is something that we call a podcast closing team. And if you're not familiar, if you haven't seen one of our previous videos before, if you don't really know who I am, my name is Jamie Atkinson. I'm the creator of the Podcast Profit Accelerator. We created the podcast closing method. And what podcast closing has done is able to help all of our clients generate about $7 million from their podcast just in the last few years. And how podcast closing works is very simple. The first thing you do is you invite your dream customer onto a podcast. You put out an invitation. You say, hey, would you like to come get featured on my show? The next thing that happens is that once we've invited them on the show, they actually come on to the podcast and they do a podcast interview. And during that interview, we get them curious about our offer. We seed the idea of working together, but ultimately we're just building a really great relationship. And then the third thing that we do is we actually transition from the podcast interview onto a sales call. And this methodology is something that we've done with our clients for the last 3 years. We've helped over 350 entrepreneurs implement this inside of their business, creating top 100 podcasts that generate high ticket sales every single week. And it's really fun because, you can do like one post on Facebook. You can get like 200 comments that come onto that post. In fact, we did one literally just a couple of days ago that got about 200 comments coming in. And you can go and have, maybe 100 of those people who book in inside of your calendar to come on your podcast over the next couple of weeks or months. So generally from a post like that, we're able to get about 150 leads. And out of those 150 leads, we'll maybe have about 30 interviews that we end up doing. And then, let me just write that down, 30 interviews. And then from those 30 interviews we do, we're typically going to book about 15 sales calls. So pretty effective, in terms of the methodology that we have. Now, one thing that was a problem though, and this is where podcast closing teams came in, is that we didn't do this in our business anymore. Like we helped a lot of clients do this, but we ended up not doing it in my own business. And the reason was really just because I didn't have time to do 30 interviews a week. Like I just didn't have the capacity to do that as the business owner. And a lot of our businesses are the same. Stage one, when people start to work with us, is the very first thing that we tend to do is help them get to that 10K a month mark where they've got a 6-figure business. And that's pretty easy. Usually most of the time, it's just about knowing who the customer is, having a great offer, and then getting on 5 to 10 conversations a week with a podcast. And you can usually get to that 10K mark really easy. The second stage that we tend to take people to is they then go and they get themselves to about 20 to 30K a month so they can start to outsource sales. So at this point, they've got a multiple 6-figure business, and now they're not doing the selling anymore. Now we bring in a salesperson who is going to take those sales calls. And we do that just by increasing the volume. If you're doing 5 to 10 podcast interviews a week, we reduce them down to being 30-minute interviews. And you can usually, in that 5 to 10 hours a week, easily get to the 30 to the 40K mark. But there was a problem, which was, well, once you get to that 30K mark, what happens if you don't have time inside of your business? What happens if you don't have time to do that many interviews every single week? And so stage 3, this is where we take people to 100K a month, a 7-figure business. And what we do is we bring in a team of podcast setters. And so what these setters do is they host the podcast interviews for you. And this is what we call a podcast closing team. So what we've done for a couple of our different clients and what we do for ourselves with these podcast closing teams is that you basically have, let's say you've got your first podcast setter over here and your second podcast setter over there. We're getting these people working 30 hours a week part-time, and what they're doing in that time is completing a lot of podcast interviews. So they will typically do 20 to 30 interviews a week for each of these podcast setters. And over time, you can actually increase that to around about 50 a week once they get really good at this. And what happens from that is about 15 of those, half of them, 50%, turn into sales calls. And we do this through our unique methods that we teach inside of our process, which is really cool. We call it podcast closing. And so typically out of those 15 sales calls that come in, what we'll typically find is 20 to 30% of them close into deals, which is great. You know, most of the time we're talking about 3 to 5 sales that are happening with each setter each week. And so you can see pretty quickly, you know, if you have a team of 2 setters that are doing this through this process, you know, most of the time we're getting to the point where we're doing 6 to 10 sales a week, which if you have a high ticket offer, you know, just for context, let's say you sell a 5K program, which is a little cheap. You know, a lot of people will charge more money, but let's say it's 5K. You know, what we're talking about is 30K to 50K a week just from these 2 setters, which ain't bad. You know, we're talking 120K to 200K a month just from a podcast that you don't even run, which is kind of great because from the owner's perspective, all I do with my podcast setting team is, you know, I have one call with them a week where I go over sales numbers, we look at the projections, all of that kind of stuff, and they host all the podcast interviews. I don't really have to do anything. I host the meeting. My admin assistant posts all of the podcast interviews, and then the setters do the interviews and book the sales calls. And so this is really cool. Like, this is one of the things that we've been helping a lot of our clients do. You know, we've had 2 people who've come into our high ticket offer to help them do this. We're actually opening up a third position. We're pretty soon going to be helping our third person to implement one of these podcast closing teams, which is pretty cool. But what I wanted to tell you guys about today is something I kind of stumbled across by accident, which is this perpetual lead machine. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how the podcast closing traffic system works, because a lot of the time people are like, well, Jamie, this makes sense, right? I get somebody in, they do a podcast interview, and then they turn them into a sales call. That system's cool, but where do we get the customers from? So I want to tell you a little bit about the traffic system and how this traffic actually turns into this perpetual lead system and what we do on the back end. So first of all, what I want to tell you guys about is the funnel and how it works. So the funnel that we get people coming through is an interview funnel. And the interview funnel is really quite simple. It's just 3 pages. On the first page of the funnel, it's the invitation. We say, hey, you know, we have a top 100 podcast. Here are the people we've interviewed on the show. We'd love for you to apply to come onto the podcast. If you're this type of person, come on the show. And on that page, there's a survey that they fill out. Now, when they fill out that survey, once they go to the second page, they then get booked in on the calendar for the podcast interview. And then on the third page, we have a thank you page. And this does a job of beginning to pre-sell them into what it is that we do and what it is that we sell. And now once they come in to this system, we also send them an email sequence. And this is a 5-day or a 7-day email sequence. Ours currently is a 5-day sequence. And what this does is it's a pre-sell email sequence. It basically begins to sell them on the idea of working together inside of the business. You know, we begin to tell them what to expect on the interview. We tell them, you know, hey, here's how we created this podcast. Here's how we got into the business. Here's the person who's going to be doing the interview with you. Here's some tips to make sure you get the most out of it. And most of the time when people come on podcast interviews, they don't get anything. They don't get emails. They don't get sequences. They don't get any personality. And so we make sure in these emails, they are just filled full of personality and vibrancy so that we begin to sell people onto it. So this is the general makeup of the funnel. They come in, they fill out the survey, they get booked in the calendar, and then they get the thank you emails. Now, what's cool about this, and this is why this system works well, is that this is a really good offer. The offer of this page is come get featured on a top 100 podcast. So a lot of people are going to be really willing to fill in this survey because it's an amazing offer. It's something that they really want, and it's got a lot of benefit inside of their business. And we're going to get them on the show. We're going to feature them. We're going to give them all of that credibility and exposure. But one of the really powerful things that we've got here is we've got these leads coming in who are hyper qualified, who are our dream customers, because that's who we want to get featured onto the show. And so what happens is, first of all, a lot of people fill out that survey because the offer is so good. And so this is really amazing. But what we did by accident, and this is how it's turned into this perpetual lead system, is that inside of this survey, we added in a referral element. And this is really good. I'm kind of amazed at how well this is working. So at the bottom of the survey, we say, hey, is there 2 to 3 people who you would also think would be a good fit to come on the podcast? And they put the name and the email of 2 to 3 people. Now, on average, people are actually putting about 1.7 people on average. I know you can't have 1.7 people, so it's about 2 people on average they're referring. But what this means is for every lead that comes into our system, 2 more leads are being added. And I think you can see where this is going with the perpetual lead machine. And so when somebody gets added in as a referral, what happens is we send them to a separate referral list. So they're not going onto our main email list. And we basically send them 3 emails which say, hey, this person here referred you, and we're able to pull the exact name and email of the person that referred them. So it would be like, let's say you had a friend called Sean, and he put your name on this list. It'd be like, hey, what's up? I know this is random. I'm emailing you out the blue, but Sean, your friend over here, by the way, here's his email address. He referred you to come get featured on our Top 100 podcast. Now, we usually don't do this, but if you're curious and you want to get in on the show, you can fill in an application here and get featured. Let me know. By the way, if you like the style of this email, if you want to learn more about podcasting, if you're kind of into this idea, then you can join our main list by clicking here. And so what we're doing is we've got really 2 call to actions on these referral emails that come out. The first one is book in for the Top 100 interview. And then the second one is really a softer one, which is, just join our list and get our emails about what it is that we help you to do. And so when we've put this into practice, it's been working amazingly well, because every single lead that's coming in, we're getting the opportunity to get a referral where we use the person's name inside of that email. So it's very, very powerful. It's very personalized. And we've got these leads coming in. And so I want to give you just kind of an example of how this is going to be working with the traffic that we're implementing. So one of the traffic systems that we're using for our clients is something we're calling the JV micro influencer strategy. And I don't know if you guys have ever done a joint venture before, but typically they are exhausting. There's a lot of elements that go into doing a JV. You've got to get the agreement. You've got to figure out payments. You've got to figure out how to track the affiliates. You've got to go and write a bunch of emails. You've got to put that into your system. You might have to go live. There's all of this crap that you have to do with a JV, which is frankly really exhausting. So with our JV micro influencer strategy, we kind of get rid of all of that. And how it works is very simple. Step 1 is you get someone to agree to be a JV, which is great. Step 2, you send them an email sequence, which they copy. We actually have this set up where it's 1 click and it loads into their email sequence, which is really great. And we do this with ActiveCampaign, by the way, in case you're curious what the email sequence is. Once we get them to 1 click in that email sequence, all they do is they run that email sequence. They click 1 button, they say, okay, run it. And that's it. And the reason why this works so well is that what we do on the back end, which is very simple, is we set up an interview funnel, and all the emails are saying is they're saying, hey, do you want to get featured on a Top 100 podcast? So again, because the offer is so good to get featured on a Top 100 podcast, the traffic that comes from this is outstanding. We had one friend, and he did this about 1.5 years ago, but he did an email like this, and he said, hey guys, he had an email list of about 5,000 people, and he said, hey guys, what's up? So he sent this out to 5,000 people, and about 2,000 people were actually like responsive on the list, so to speak. And he said, hey, what's up? One of my friends has this amazing podcast. Do you want to get featured on it? And from the 2,000 or so people that were actually, engaged on the list, what was crazy is they had 400 applications come in. Not people clicking through onto the email, not people, landing on the page, completed applications. So just for context, a typical email, if you send it out to 2,000 engaged people, you'll get about a 1% click-through rate, which means that you'll get about 20 people clicking, 20 to 50 people clicking. So you can see right away, imagine 400 applications. That must have mean at least double that clicked it, right? So we're talking about 800 clicks, which is insane, right? Such a high click-through rate to get featured onto one of these shows. So because the offer is so good, we can get so much traffic. So how this works is very, very simple, is we go out and we get somebody to become a JV micro-influencer, and we get them to just email their list. And when they email their list, they get people applying to come on the show. So we did one of these campaigns with one of our clients recently. And so here's how it went. He got the JV to agree. The JV emailed, and the JV got about 60 people that came into the funnel and filled in a survey. So what this looked like was 3 emails, and the outcome was 60 applications. What then happened was those 60 applications added 110 referrals. So there was 110 names and emails of people that were put inside of those applications that said, hey, this person should also come on this show. They're a good fit. And of about 110 of those referrals, we didn't have the email sequence that I mentioned above that we got set up, but he still had about 50 of those who then filled in the form. So about half of them. And that was with just a very simple email that said, hey, this person referred you. Do you want to come on the show? Now that we've got a custom built referral email sequence, we're going to get an even higher result than that. And so what's cool about this is that, first of all, basically every time we get a lead coming in, we double those leads. So imagine you get 1,000 leads coming in. You end up getting about another 1,000 leads for free, right? You end up with 2,000 leads. That immediately cuts your cost of acquisition in half, which is insane. But the other thing that's cool is that with the way we set up these JV micro-influencer campaigns, one, they're very easy to do. So because it's literally just clicking a button and sending out 3 to 4 emails that just say, hey, do you want to get featured on a show? They aren't salesy emails. When you do a JV and you see a JV happening and they're super salesy, it's like, hey, I'm partnering with this person, jump in on this offer, there's this deadline, it's ending. It's not really like that because we're not selling anything in the podcast invitation. It's really just a really great ask. Hey, do you want to come get featured onto a show? So there's no sales elements in this. None at all. So it's not something that is exhausting to email your list about. And so what happens is it's very easy for the influencer to do, but we give a percentage back in commission to the person that we do this partnership with if the person who does an interview becomes a client. So for the JV influencer, they send out a valuable email to their list. It's really easy to do, and then they make money from it. And so all we do is every time we get a new JV influencer, we say, hey, do you want to do this every 6 weeks? Or if you're really ballsy, you can say, hey, you want to do this every 4 weeks? And what you've now created for that JV influencer is a recurring monthly revenue, because every time they refer people to come and get onto the podcast, if you turn them into clients, you're getting them paid. And it's something that they're going to be willing to email their audience about because it's valuable. It doesn't take anything away. It actually enhances what they're emailing their list about. And so there's 2 ways that this perpetual traffic system really works. The first way is that every lead we have immediately turns into 2 leads because of the referral element. And just remember that every referred lead that comes in refers 1.7 leads on top. So every referred lead will refer more leads, which will refer more leads. And so this perpetuates out over time to actually a much better rate of return than 100% on your leads. You're going to get perpetually a lot more than that because it's going to grow and compound over time. That's the first thing that's really powerful, is that it has this referral element. The second thing that's really powerful is that every JV that you secure can do this multiple times. Very easy, right? This is a very simple JV promotion to do multiple times. So if you get one JV partner, they can promote this, let's say, 5 to 6 times a year. Now, what happens if you get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? Now you've got JV promotions that are happening on a very consistent basis. And so let's say you have 10 JV partners, and on average, they bring in 50 interview applications every single time that they do a joint venture partner together. I just want to give you some context of what this looks like. So let's say they do 6 a year, once every 2 months. What that means is that one JV is going to give you 300 applications a year. So if you have 10 JV partners, you're going to get 3,000 applications a year. But every one of those leads is worth double, because they're bringing in 1.7 times the amount of leads, in fact, nearly triple. So those 3,000 applications are actually going to bring in around about 7,000 more applications in a year. And so just from having 10 JV partners, which is very easy to get them to do because you're just asking them to send an email to invite people to come onto the show, you're getting nearly 10,000 leads that's coming in across the year. What happens when you get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people agreeing to do this? Perpetual leads that are coming in. So we're implementing this inside of my business, and I'm really excited to implement this for some of our clients as well. But because of the nature of these two elements, the one, the referral engine about getting other people featured on the podcast, and two, the fact that a simple JV partner will be able to do this multiple times just by sending an email out, and the offer is so good that they'll want to do it, this can be a huge source of traffic and leads for any particular one client. And all you have to do is go and find 10 people to go out to be leads. And so just to give you an idea on those 10 JV partners, let's say you've got those 10,000 leads that have come in across the year from just getting 10 JV people to agree to say, hey, yeah, I'd be happy to do that, and email my list and get them featured on. You know, we're going to find from those 10,000 leads, we're probably going to filter down, and we're going to have about 3,000 people that would actually come onto the podcast with the setters. About 1,500 of those are going to turn into sales calls. Let's just assume some of those people are going to fall off. They're not going to show up. So I'm going to estimate that actually about 450 of those, it's really high. That's a 30% drop-off rate, but let's just pretend that it would be that high. So let's just say there's about 1,000 sales calls that are actually going to happen. From 1,000 sales calls, even if you only close 20%, which is low, then you're going to be closing 200 sales. If you sell at 5K, 200 sales at $5,000 is $1 million a year. And that is from just 10 JV partners. So do you have in your audience right now 10 people who would be willing to email their audience and say, hey, would you like to get featured on a top 100 podcast? If you do, then bingo, there's the 7-figure business right there. Now, the cool thing is once you've got your 10 JVs, it doesn't really require a lot of maintenance to keep getting them doing this. You can just keep adding more and more and more over time, right? This month, I'm going to go and find 3 new people to promote this to their email list and agree to do this perpetually, which they will do because it's a great offer, it enhances for their audience, and they make revenue from it. And they can do it as often as every 4 weeks, but most of the people will do it every 6 to 8 weeks. So that's a little bit about the perpetual traffic system that we stumbled across. These leads are just going to be coming in left, right, and center. I'll give you guys an update once we've got this up and running inside of our business. But this is how it works. I hope this was valuable. Now, if you're the kind of person who's looking at this and saying, how the shit do I do this inside of my business? It's honestly very difficult to understand how to do this without seeing behind the scenes. We've been really lucky the last 3 years. We've had literally hundreds of businesses that have come through that we've helped to implement these types of systems. And so we've had a lot of exposure to things that go wrong and things that go right. And we've got all of the things that you might need, from the actual funnels, the email sequences, the training on how to do this effectively, how to bring in a team member, what to do to hire people, the posts that you would put, the onboarding timeline of how to train that person. There's all of these different elements that most people don't think about when it comes to getting something like this set up. I want to give you the infrastructure and actually do this for you. And so right now, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be taking on one new client to actually build out this system for them, actually doing it for you. Now, we previously took on 2 clients as beta. It is now more expensive. For this next one slot, we are going to be putting the price up again by another $15,000. So the price is going to be going up by $15,000 for this done for you system. It is more expensive than a car, but it is cheaper than a house. So it is an expensive offer. So only consider applying for this position if you are somebody who is, one, already successful with an offer, and you really need to be doing at least $30,000 a month in your business for this to make sense for you. If you aren't yet doing $30K a month, you can still book a call and we'll talk about our Podcast Profit Accelerator system. This is where we teach people how to do this in our coaching program. But this done for you offer, where we're building out one of these podcast closing teams for you and tapping into one of these perpetual lead systems that we're talking about here. If you want me to build something like that out for you as a done for you offer, it takes about 12 weeks. But only apply for that if you're at about $30,000 a month or more inside of your business. So if you're interested in that, on this page, you can scroll down, you can book a call, we can chat about it to see if it's a fit. But yeah, we are only taking on one new client for this. As soon as that client is in, everybody else will no longer be able to join at that price. It's going to go up by $15,000 every time somebody joins. And we're only opening up slots every sort of 6 to 12 weeks as we're bringing people into this system, just because I want to make sure we get really great results for the clients who are doing it, like we've done so far for ourselves and also for those 2 clients that we took on the first time. So if you're interested, we'd love for you guys to jump on a call and to chat about it. If you do miss out on the chance and we've already taken somebody on for this offer, you can join the wait list and we'll let you know when a new spot comes available in the future. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this. Scroll down below if you want to book a call. And as always, keep being awesome and do fun things with podcasts.